please recognize our judicial body.
These are preliminary findings from the 4 days of testimony which we received during this tribunal. We've received a significant amount of evidence during the 4 days in relation to 10 charges that were lodged. The panel of judges has not had sufficient time to study all the evidence and provide a comprehensive judgment. But we are going to provide you today our preliminary response to the evidence. It is our view that the United States government has committed crimes against humanity in relationship, particularly at this point, to its failure to make functional levees that should have protected the city of New Orleans and its inhabitants from flooding. We find also that Katrina's contribution to the death and suffering that the evidence has shown was minimal. Rather, it was reckless disregard and in some instances negligence of the United States government that created the devastation that we continue to see today. We also find that there was reckless disregard and negligence on the part of state and local government with respect to some of the charges lodged. Our preliminary findings are, first, that with respect to charge number 3, excuse me one moment, that with respect to charge number 3, the governments are in violation of the human right to life, human dignity, and recognition as a person. With respect to charge number 1, the government is in violation of the human right to be free from racial discrimination, as was testified to regarding the actions of law enforcement and approving and permitting the acts of violence by vigilante groups. With respect to charge number 2, we find that there is a violation of the human right to return, resettlement, and reintegration of internally displaced persons. With respect to charge number 4, we find that there was a violation of the human right to be free from degrading treatment and punishment. With respect to charge number 5, we find that there was a violation of the human right to freedom of movement. With respect to charge number 6, we find a violation of the human right to adequate housing. With respect to charge number 7, we find that there is a violation of the human right to education. With respect to charge number 8, we find a violation of the human right to vote, electoral rights, and the right to participate in governance. With respect to charge number 9, we find there's a violation of the human right to a fair trial, the right to liberty and security of the person, and the right to equal protection under the law. We also find that there was a disproportionate impact with respect to race and gender for several of the policies and practices carried out by the federal, state, and local government. These are preliminary findings. We, during the next several months, expect to do a detailed analysis of all of the testimony and written submissions that have been provided to us, so that by the beginning of December of 2007, we can issue a more detailed and final decision. In the interim, we invite and request that additional information be provided to us specifically on the issue of race and gender discrimination so that it can support broader findings on these issues. That constitutes the totality of our preliminary findings. Thank you.
Yes.
I believe
We lost. Oh.
I have no more power.
Well, let me.
I can use my court voice.
Okay. Use your court voice.
I believe the next event would be for statements from the judges in solidarity or reflection on the past 4 days of testimony and evidence. Not all of us are going to speak. Time does not allow that. But some of us in particular would like to make statements. So I think we'll work from that central mic since we know that's on. And I will turn to my colleague from Mexico. Guadalupe? Where is he from? Yet to be determined.
Bueno, en primer lugar, debemos felicitarnos los jueces por haber estado en este tribunal. Para nosotros tiene un significado profundamente internacional.
I want to say that all of us who were able to participate in this as judges should be I think we should all be very proud of the work and the fact that we were able to be on this, in this role. For us, this tribunal has an extremely deep international significance.
Después de haber visto todas las testimonios, oídos, reflexionado y visto, algunos hemos pensado esto: si este gobierno de los Estados Unidos hace lo que está haciendo con la población de su país, ¿qué nos espera a los pueblos de este mundo?
One reflection that many of us from other countries who were part of the judges panel ask ourselves is, imagine if the U.S. government can do this to its own population, what fate awaits us in the rest of the world?
En ese sentido, estamos profundamente comprometidos a dar el veredicto final, estudiar todos los documentos y al mismo tiempo, de manera individual, queremos hacer algunas sugestiones a los presidentes de este tribunal.
So we are committed, all of us, to go back and to carry forth on this work. Some of us in particular have some suggestions which we want to put forward to the organizers and to the conveners.
Bueno, en primer lugar, ha sido manifestado por uno de los jueces la fecha del 8 de diciembre, como una fecha, como una primera perspectiva. En el sentido, nosotros lo tomamos de ese día tener la resolución final y con ella depositarla en las embajadas de todos los países concernidos, en las embajadas americanas.
The proposal which we'd like to see if we can carry forth on is to have the final verdict, and we're all committed to participating and working towards this final verdict, and to set ourselves a target of having it ready by December 8th when we would collectively present it in all of our countries and beyond to the U.S. embassies.
Bueno, una vez más agradecemos habernos invitado y estaremos con ustedes en todo. Muchas gracias.
So thank you very much. Count on us. We will be there every step of the way as we develop and deepen this work. Thank you.
This is not my voice. Get up and walk, nigger, you ain't dead yet. He walked blindly with bent back, his mouth dripping blood, his arms dangling loose. There were 4 of them, soldiers, and he was walking in between. Tears clogged his eyes. Down the slope to his right was a wobbly sea of brown water stretching away to a trembling sky. And there were boats, white boats, free boats, leaping and jumping like fish. There were boats, and they were going to kill him. The sun was shining, pouring showers of yellow into his eyes. 2 soldiers floated in front of him, and he heard 2 walking in back. He was between, walking, and the sun dropped spangles of yellow into his eyes. They going to kill me. His knees buckled, and he went forward on his face. For a moment he seemed not to breathe. Then with each heave of his chest, he cried, God, don't let him kill me. Stop him from killing black folks. My father, Richard Wright, was 2nd generation of the floods of 1927. And this is a testimonial down by the riverside, Uncle Tom's Children, prescribed reading 2008 by the University of Ole Miss, the flood stories. I just wanted to add that I flew down here to history from France, and I met history here. And I just wanted to say, we own the earth. We will not be the damned of the earth. We are the owners also of the water. We must not allow them to exploit, harness the power of our water. We are made of water. We are born of water. We are born of the Katrina of the Middle Passage. We need another Frantz Fanon. We need to study that illness that has turned the water against us. I want to say that you all know that future wars will be fought over water. We need to know now what to make of that. We need to study the positive aspects of the hurricanes, to put them on our side. And I will give you one example that I lived through, with guns in my back, with guns in the back of my little girl of 2 years old. And it all came from a problem of water back in 1966 in Africa, Ghana. The building of the Volta Dam, the selling of the interests of the building of the dam to Alcoa and other U.S. companies. This stirred the left. in Nkrumah's Ghana, and that was us. We worked harder. We knew the Americans were rushing in on the tide of white power, white water. It is the urgency of our work against that, the alarm of the Volta Dam that caused the coup d'etat. I just want to say that I flew down to history, but I flew down to much more. I flew down to what never happened in my past. I flew down to the re-beginning and the rebirth of the tricontinental. And those of you who are elders like I am, remember how the tricontinental never got off its feet. It was supposed to happen in Cuba, but its leader was assassinated, Ben Barka, and his body never found. They say he lies at the bottom of the water in a cement coffin. That would be fitting to our symbol. We are 3 continents assembled here, and we are the hurricane. Thank you.
Thank you. I first want to thank my co-justices for the work that they have done and the work that they will continue to do, all of us will continue to do. I want to thank the organizers, the survivors, and all those who made this tribunal possible. When I was asked to be a judge, probably a little more than a year ago, I accepted, and anyone who knows me knows that I accept roles and I take them seriously. We took our role as judges seriously. And that was, even though most of us, if not all of us, I would say all of us, had seen the devastation on our television. Some of us may have been here at periods prior to this time, read it in the newspaper. It was important for me and for most of us to listen carefully to the evidence and not just to come here and just assume, well, we're going to find them guilty because we know they're guilty. You know, they did all this stuff. We saw it already. But to really listen to the evidence, to really listen and to attempt to the best of our ability to come up with a verdict, a judgment that fit the evidence. For some of you and for some of us, we know that the preliminary verdict is a conservative one. But it's one that in the hour that we had time to really talk was the verdict that we all could definitely agree to. That we are committed to reviewing the documents, to reviewing all the testimony, and coming up with a final verdict that we feel is supported by the evidence. It is particularly difficult for me, and I would dare say many of the justices, but I'll speak from this person, the first person, in this situation because it screams for justice. And we heard those screams when we were on those vans going and touring yesterday as a part of the, again, a part of the evidentiary part of our process, to see the devastation, to go to different places. And as we kept going from neighborhood to ward, I guess they call it wards, from ward to ward, and we went from the 7th to the 8th to the upper 9th, and then we asked to go to the lower 9th because initially they did not want us to go to the lower 9th when all the rains were coming down because they said the pumps still weren't operating appropriately and they didn't want us to be in a dangerous situation. But we went into the lower 9th ward, and as we went, it became a feeling of heaviness, and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. And we heard those screams. We heard the screams of those who died in Katrina and Rita, those who died from the criminal acts of the United States government and the state government and the local government, those who died because of a conscious disregard for the lives, particularly of African descendants. But we also heard the screams of our ancestors who had died before. I heard the screams of my great-great-grandmother that was sold into slavery from Missouri down the Mississippi River to New Orleans. And so it is with that I personally make the commitment to continue my responsibilities as a judge, because those screams are for justice. That's all. They're not asking for anything else. Those screams of those who survived are for justice. And it is that to which we can commit. It is that we can say to you today, that when we leave here, and again I'll speak in the first person, even though I think I can speak for all the justices, that when I leave here, it is to continue to serve you and to do the very best that I can do to assure that that final verdict, much like the preliminary verdict, does justice to the lives that have been lost, to the lives that have been destroyed, to the lives that have been harmed, and to the overall lives of African descendants around the world and people of color around the world who say we shall not continue to be the victims of such conscious disregard, such violations of our human rights, crimes against humanity. Thank you.
Initially, I was not going to speak at this time. It has been tremendously difficult to at least appear to be an impartial judge in this setting. Adjoa shared everything that I would have said on those topics. But it was an additionally profound experience for me, because for the past 15 years I've been training law students, and my goal over those 15 years has been to train them to use their skills to service underserved communities, in particular our communities, your communities. And several of my former students are working here in New Orleans, and more are coming. But even more have come during their spring breaks and their fall breaks to volunteer their services and their time and their skills. And they would come back to me at Harvard and share with me their experiences. But there was nothing that could enable me to fully appreciate what they had experienced until I took that trip yesterday through the lower Ninth Ward. It was a profoundly spiritual and moving experience, one that is not rivaled by anything else that I have encountered in my career. And I feel very blessed to be able to take the strength and the energy of that spiritual experience to empower me to continue to do the work that needs to be done on behalf of our people. So I thank the conveners for allowing me to participate. Thank you.
Before our convener closes us out, I'd like to make some remarks on behalf of the prosecution team. I believe we all know that the prosecution team represents the people, all of you who are present. I think it's important for the people to acknowledge the contributions that that our judges have made, that our prosecution have made, as well as our translators. And I think it's important for us to recognize that work because it's unpaid work, or it's paid with the blood, sweat, and tears and the spirit in which resides within us. I think it's important for us to give acknowledgement to the entire process, to all of the elements and components that I've already spoken to. But I think it's also important, as our sister from Brazil, who is no longer here with us, one of our conveners, that we build the work, our work, on the shoulders and backs and feet of our ancestors. And as Nana before, Dr. Asa Heard has said, we have to continue to know who we are. Part of the charge of cultural rights is that the fact that we have to recognize that there's been a violation of our cultural integrity. There are other aspects, but I do want us to stand and give applaud to our judges, our prosecution team, those of us who were witnesses and survivors who've been brave enough to come forward and to share their stories, and yourself for being present to go through with us through this tribunal process. And I can't underscore, we do have to be very thankful of our translators. We've had to translate in at least that I know of, 4 different languages, and they've gone overtime. What I mean by overtime, I'm talking about, we know about union rules, regulations, so I think it's important to give everybody, stand up and give everybody a round of applause before we close out. All right. Having said that, let us close out with our convener.
It was not a waste of time. It was not just a plaything. It was a great experience. It was a great coming together. It was a lot of pain, and there was great intensity and great commitment. We want once more to thank the honorable judges for the good work, for painstakingly going through the evidence they could go through, asking the relevant questions and taking the process forward. We want to thank the many witnesses who came through to tell their stories, which are our stories, which are the stories of our people, which are the stories of the road we have walked so far. We want to thank the conveners, the prosecution teams, without which we would not have been able to do the amount of work that has been done. For everyone, it has been much, much, much more than we could have expected. And in closing, I simply want to say we cannot close this work. We will maybe close for today, adjourn for today. Greater work is still ahead. We do not do this out of benevolence, nor do we do it out of magnanimity. We are doing it because it is the only chance we have to save ourselves and to stem the tide that is rising, so that we should not be allowed to sink into barbarism. Yes. Thank you very much. we close.
And thanks the tribunal staff also. Thank the tribunal staff also. Work tirelessly. Thank you. We're closed.
I picked up someone's book because someone picked up my book. But if someone is missing their book, it has things in it, just come and I'll give it to you. I hope nobody's here that misplaced this book so I can take it home. But please, if it is your book, let me know.
We'll make certain of that. Oh, let's see. I just saw an email that said that Infecti is suggesting that we change our name.
Yeah, I think there is that proposal.
Right.
The only weakness in that proposal has been that there has not been efforts to make it inclusive. For instance, to include all the people of the Pan-Africanist Congress and so movement, who everybody knows continent has reached. It will exclude, in a very typical sense, all the leaders. And that is the major debate we are having. But it's an important development because we cannot continue calling candidates because we know